In Europe, the fears of a nuclear disaster are growing every day. In focus is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It is the largest nuclear plant in Europe, and for the last 2 weeks, Zaporizhzhia has been at grave risk. There has been fresh shelling close to the nuclear plant. Both Ukraine and Russia are blaming each other, and the UN nuclear watchdog has warned of a nuclear disaster. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says it will be a catastrophe that will impact the whole of Europe.
Any radiation incident at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant can be a blow to the countries of the European Union, and to Turkey, and to Georgia, and to countries from more distant regions. Everything depends only on the direction and strength of the wind.
The nuclear power plant is home to 6 reactors. As of the 22nd of July, just 2 of its reactors were operating. Zaporizhzhia provides over a fifth of the total electricity generated in Ukraine. The plant has been on Russia's radar since the beginning of the invasion. In early March, Russian troops seized control of the plant. Special Russian military units guard the facility. However, Ukrainian staff continue to operate it. So clearly there is a lot of tension. The United Nations nuclear watchdog says the staff is operating under stressful conditions. So if there is a nuclear accident, no one knows who will deal with it. Will it be the Russian advisors or the Ukrainian staff? In March, the nuclear power plant was struck, but there was no radiation leak. The reactors also were intact. However, both Russia and Ukraine blamed each other for the strike. In July, Russia said Ukraine had repeatedly struck the area around the plant. And on the 5th of August, the plant was shelled twice. An area near the reactors was hit. On the 6th of August, 7th and 11th, there was massive shelling again. Both sides continue to blame each other. The repeated strikes have prompted the United Nations to call for a demilitarized zone. Russia says it will facilitate a UN nuclear watchdog visit to the plant, but says it is too dangerous for the IAEA to go through Kyiv. On the other hand, the United Nations says it can facilitate the IAEA visit if both Russia and Ukraine agree.
My understanding from the IAEA is that they would like to see this mission go as quickly as possible. It's their mandate. They're in the lead. We will support them in any way we can.
Currently, there are 2 major risks. The continuous shelling could damage the plant, but it is unlikely that it will affect the nuclear reactor. The reactor is well protected. It has a powerful body with a reinforced concrete shell. But what it could affect is the reactor's cooling system. This could lead to a severe accident, like the world saw in Fukushima. Both Russia and Ukraine know the dangers of militarizing a nuclear plant or compromising the safety of a reactor. In fact, Zaporizhzhia is located just 500 kilometers from Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. However, the strikes are raising fears of a nuclear catastrophe, one that some countries in Europe are already preparing for. Neighboring Moldova has already imported 1 million iodine pills. Moldova is located 480 kilometers from the nuclear plant, but it has still shipped in iodine pills from Romania. What are these pills? They can be taken in case of a nuclear emergency. Iodine tablets can prevent radioactive elements from building up in the body. According to Moldova, in case of a nuclear disaster, the pills will be first given to emergency workers and those who cannot evacuate. And this comes as a Rutgers study says a nuclear war would cause global famine. The study says a Russia-US conflict using nuclear weapons could lead to 5 billion people dying of hunger. It analyzed the consequences of 6 different nuclear war scenarios. The worst-case scenario is a full-scale conflict between the US and Russia. The Rutgers study says it would wipe out more than half of mankind. And with me on the broadcast this minute from Paris is Dr. Paul Dorfman. He is an associate fellow in the Science Policy Research Unit at the University of Sussex. Thanks very much, Dr. Dorfman, for being here with us. How do you assess the current situation at the nuclear power plant? How serious are the risks of a nuclear disaster right now, according to you?
The UN and the IAEA both say the situation is out of control and grave. Basically, civil nuclear plants are not constructed to withstand a military attack. There's no way that any civil nuclear plant can withstand a missile attack. And it's not simply the reactor or the reactor pressure vessel, it's also the spent fuel. In other words, the high-level radioactive waste that is cooling by the reactor. Now, if either of these, the reactor vessel, or the spent fuel were to receive a hit, then you're talking about a very, very grave nuclear radioactive situation.
Right. The UN has called for a demilitarized zone. It says it can facilitate an IAEA visit if Russia and Ukraine both agree. How crucial is an IAEA visit at the moment? And what happens if and when that happens?
It's incredibly crucial. It's incredibly important that there is a demilitarized zone around the reactor. That said, IAEA have never advised on this kind of issue before, have never said that there could be a possibility of a military attack on a civil nuclear plant. In this sense, what we're seeing for the first time is the weaponization of civil nuclear, and all that implies for civil nuclear reactors in Ukraine, in Europe, and worldwide.
What do you make of Russia's statement that the IAEA visit through Kyiv will come with a lot of risks attached? What do you make of the statements coming in from both Russia and Ukraine at this point, given the current risks at the nuclear power plant?
It is quite simply an appalling situation. The notion that a civil nuclear reactor can come under military attack is almost beyond belief. Now, Russia is playing Russia's normal game, which is to do what Russia does. And the notion that they won't allow UN and IAEA investigators in is simply not believable. The real problem here, I mean, basically, the real problem here is that we have military attack on a civil nuclear plant. And this civil nuclear plant is the largest nuclear plant in Europe. So if anything were to go wrong, you're not simply talking about problems, you know, in the Ukraine. You're talking about potential problems for Europe, and most importantly for Russia. If there is a radioactive release from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, it's as likely to go to Russia as it is anywhere else in the world.
Dr. Dorfman, appreciate very much joining us on the broadcast and sharing those perspectives.
Thank you.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.